According to Yahoo News, D.L.Hughley confronts Rutherford County for arresting kids. Actor and comedian D.L.Hughley says society should hold judicial leaders to a higher standard. So when Hughley discovered juvenile court judge Donna Scott Davenport created Rutherford County's system, which illegally arrested and jailed thousands of children for decades, he shared a fitting punishment. Quote, "She was a conduit for that system," unquote, Hughley said Thursday night to a standing room only audience at the Middle Tennessee State University. Quote, "It can't just be an apology and you resigning. She should go to jail," unquote. Many in the crowd applauded in agreement. Hughley, one of the original stars of the Kings of Comedy, was in Murfreesboro on Thursday to deliver a keynote address, part of MTSU's celebration of Black History Month. As expected, his social commentary included condemnation of Davenport. He's talked about her before in his nationally syndicated radio show. Davenport, 69, is one of the last elected officials still in office after being tied to the country's notorious juvenile system justice policies. She's also an MTSU's alumni and former adjunct professor at the university. In 2015, she delivered MTSU's commencement speech. On January 18th, nearly 6 years after her complicity became public when the arrest of students at Hobgood Elementary and other locations, Davenport announced she would not seek re-election. Her announcement also occurred one day after the Democratic Party lawmakers in Tennessee General Assembly said they were seeking legislation to oust her. Davenport announced she will retire after completing her 8-year term by August 31st. Quote, "After prayerful thought and talking with my family, I've decided not to run for re-election after serving more than 22 years on the bench," unquote, Davenport said in her announcement. Quote, "I will always look back at my time as a judge as one of the greatest honors of my life, and I'm so proud of what this court has accomplished in the last 2 decades and how it has positively affected the lives of young people and families in Rutherford County. I wish my successor the best and hope that this job provides them the same fulfillment it has provided me over the years," unquote. Hughley wasn't moved by Davenport's decision. He believes she and others should face criminal charges for ruining lives. Quote, "I think it should even be a question as to if that's even a viable option," unquote, he said. Quote, "I think that if you've wrecked lives, if you've miscarried justice, then it shouldn't be just Jesus told me to retire," unquote. Last fall, during his nationally syndicated radio show, Hughley compared the arrest of blacks for crimes that didn't exist during the Jim Crow laws era to Rutherford County's actions in recent decades. Davenport is Rutherford County's first and only juvenile court judge dating back to 2000. That year, she won her seat as an independent. Davenport ran for re-election in 2006 as a Democrat in an uncontested election and again in 2014 as a Republican. In March 2003, Davenport established the de facto policy later referred to as the filter system according to the court records. This policy was designed to incarcerate children pre-trial whenever there was a probable cause that the child committed a delinquent offense and jail staff deemed incarceration to be in the child's best interest. Best interest was never defined, leaving it to discretion of the administrators of Rutherford County Juvenile Detention Center. As a result, thousands of minors were arrested and jailed for simple charges as truancy or made up, such as being rumored to be at the scene of a fight. Some children were as young as 9. In April 2016, police officers arrested children at Hobgood Elementary and other locations whose voices were believed to be in YouTube videos during a fight, charging them with failing to break up the off-campus incident. Some of the children were not involved, others were never at the scene. Some were handcuffed. Problem was, quote, "Tennessee law strictly prohibits the pretrial incarceration of children," unquote, unless the youth are being charged with a violent felony, a weapons offense, or probation violation, according to a class action lawsuit filed against the county. Litigation led up to the U.S. District Judge Waverly D. Crenshaw Jr.'s 2017 court order to stop the illegal incarcerations. Quote, "The juveniles that are being arrested in Rutherford County are being deprived of their procedural due process rights, which is unquestionably irreparably harmed," unquote, Crenshaw said in his ruling. In June, Rutherford County agreed to pay as much as $11 million to settle a class action lawsuit that accused officials of ignoring state law and the U.S. Constitution by illegally arresting and incarcerating more than 1,000 children. The settlement was the result of 20 months of court-ordered negotiation. By December, the final settlement shrunk to an estimated of $6 million and closer to 500 filed claims, paying $4,800 per illegal incarceration and $1,000 per illegal arrest. The original plaintiffs received more. Thousands of others were ineligible to join the lawsuit because of the statute of limitations. Quote, no one can do a thing like that in a vacuum, unquote, Hughley said of the county's policies. Quote, there has to be accomplices, there have to be people that look the other way, there have to be judges and jailers and lawmakers and prosecutors all sending people to jail, ruining their lives, unquote.
That was next, too close. So while over the last few years we have been fighting to dismantle the monuments to Jim Crow still exists. Jim Crow, during the Jim Crow era, you could jail black people for crimes that didn't even exist. They were no longer on the books. Everyone knew it. The judges knew that they didn't exist. The prosecutors knew they didn't exist. The jailers knew that they didn't exist, but it was okay because it was black people. The same thing is playing out in Rutherford County, Tennessee, as we speak. Judge Donna Scott Davenport is a judge who, by the way, not a very successful jurist. It took her, I guess, 9 times to pass the bar, and when she finally passed, 3 years later, she was sitting on the bench. It's an interesting thing. Tennessee, the juvenile conviction rate is about 5%. In her court, it is 48%. She is sending children as young as 5 and 6 years old for crimes that she knows that do not exist. Now, the judges knew that they didn't exist. The jailers knew they didn't exist. The prosecutors knew they didn't exist. But yet those children as young as 5 and 6 years old have been sent to jail on made-up charges. It's interesting because then they will use those same statistics to say that black children are morally bankrupt. They will edify their position that we are naturally criminal. They will keep using statistics from this all over the country, and I'm pretty sure she is not the only one. So Nathan Bedford Forrest was a statue that should have been torn down, but he already represents, still exists in Tennessee as we speak. This judge right now has ruined potentially hundreds of lives, thousands of lives, just because she could. And you can't tell me judges didn't know it. You can't tell me jailers didn't know it. You can't tell me prosecutors didn't know it. And you cannot tell me defense attorneys did not know that these crimes did not exist. They were not on the books. And I don't know about you if you know this, but when young black children go to jail or go to any jail time, it is a scarlet letter. Instead of A, it is an F for felon. And once the system grabs them, it never lets them go. Now, our children are not perfect, but you don't have to, and there are a lot of things that the children are going to do wrong. The one thing you don't need to do is make up laws to ensnare them. And this woman, Judge Donna Scott Davenport, who sits in Rutherford County, Tennessee, who's responsible for a veritable jail meal, a veritable prison pipeline, sits on the bench and sends young black children to jail. I'm not talking about teenagers too, but as young as 5 and 6 years old. I would say this, that this woman needs to be examined by the Department of Justice, and she needs to go to jail. There was a judge in Pennsylvania who was sending young black men to private prisons that he had to deal with. He got money for doing it. I guarantee you she found a way to enrich herself. She found a way to make something happen, to impact people's lives. She sits on the bench and sends young boys and girls to prison for the start of the journey into prison for no reason at all, making things up, making laws up. So instead of taking the monuments to slavery down, it is great that we do that. We need to take the attitudes away, that you can do whatever you want to black people because they're black. And the people who are in charge of defending them, what do they do? The judges who were in charge of sentencing, what do they do? The jailers who put them, what do they do? That couldn't have happened in a vacuum. And this woman, Donna Scott Davenport, I know for me that I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure the Department of Justice investigates and jails this woman and anybody else involved in it. Her name is Donna Scott Davenport. She is the judge in Rutherford County, Tennessee. And all of us need to raise our voices because I guarantee you this kind of dilemma happens all over the country all the time. A statue to Jim Crow, a monument to Jim Crow, is not as dangerous as the mentality to Jim Crow that still exists. And Donna Scott Davenport, a judge in Rutherford County, Tennessee, she needs to be investigated by the Department of Justice and jailed immediately. That is a little note from the GED section. We got the Jazz Report coming up in 15 minutes. It's the D.L.Hughley Show.
So, this is just a crazy article that I came across. I don't even know how D.L.Hughley found out about this and he's shined a light on this, but to me this just seems like making money off of locking people up, right? Specifically locking kids up. Everybody knows that the judicial system makes money every time a person is incarcerated. And when you go to those small little towns, you see that there aren't really a lot of arrests that goes around besides from the town drunk, or some small little thing happening here or there. So they need revenue. They want to tap some of that federal revenue, and basically they are locking people up, and they're basically getting paid for locking people up. I'm not gonna try to even imagine I can break down the full corrupted system of locking people up here and now, but I know that the federal government does pay money for locking people up. And then there's probably also money being paid to and from the jailhouse. So to me, this just seems like a scam to make money by locking kids up over some silly nonsense. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think this whole thing is a scam? I see no reason for you to be locking little kids up for simple violations other than you making money. So let me know what you think. Comments below.